Established in 1637, the Burying Point on Charter Street is the oldest cemetery in Salem, Massachusetts. Every year, thousands of visitors gaze into owl-eyed skulls and read the chiseled names of those who died over 300 years ago. For those wanting to learn more about this forgotten art form, this video will provide an in-depth introduction to early American gravestones. Let's start with the basics. This is a headstone, and it's typically comprised of three main sections. The large arc found at the top center is called a lunette, or tympanum. At the sides we have the borders, or shoulders, and at the center we find the inscription, or epitaph. The lunette is generally the first thing people notice on a gravestone. Stonecutters typically filled this arched area with visual reminders of death: winged skulls, soul effigies, setting suns, portraits of the deceased, and later on, the somber, albeit repetitive, urn and willow tree. A number of smaller symbols were sometimes carved above or below it, such as the hourglass, coffin, darts, spade, scythe, crossbones, or cherubs. This grim iconography was occasionally echoed by various Latin phrases, the most common of which was memento mori, which translates to remember death. In contrast to the lunette, the borders of headstones typically depicted life. Flowers or fruit can frequently be seen growing on either side of the epitaph, symbolizing the body's earthly pilgrimage and heavenly resurrection. Sometimes even a head was carved at the top of the stem, clearly indicating that human life blossomed once buried in the ground. Decorative borders were also very popular, and they ranged from abstract patterns to acanthus scrolls. The top of these were usually crowned with ornamental finials or rosettes that displayed the stonecutter's skill. On rare occasions, the shoulders were reserved for full-length portraits of death and Father Time. The epitaph is the area between the shoulders, where stonecutters engraved information about the deceased. Some were rather straightforward, showing just the name, age, and date of death. Others were more biographical, providing information about their education, interests, or cause of death. Others included touching poems, and some were written in Latin. When reading these epitaphs, pay close attention to the layout design. Stonecutters developed unique typefaces, combined letters into ligatures, justified or centered text, used superscript characters, determined leading, utilized baseline grids, interesting serifs or ampersands, chose between small caps, uppercase, lowercase, old-style numerals, and used italics for emphasis, to name just a few. Because of these elements, which are still used today, stonecutters should be recognized as early typographers and graphic designers, in addition to being sculptors. Another aspect that should not be overlooked is the stone itself, which varies considerably in color. Slate, after all, is never just gray. Depending on the quarry, slate can be charcoal black, or pearl white, or have tones of olive green, burnt sienna, deep orange, lavender, or even be a mix of different colored stripes. When it comes to viewing a headstone, the best time is on a bright, cloudless day, when the sun skims the surface of the stone from the side. This raking light creates both strong highlights and deep shadows that dramatically reveals both the inscription and relief sculpture. Just compare when the same gravestone is seen in shadow and lit from the side. The difference is clear. Not only does raking light accentuate the carving with bold contrasts, but it also allows viewers to examine fine details up close without casting a shadow on the stone. When it comes to the epitaph, oblique light greatly increases the legibility of letters, as you can see by this broken fragment. In fact, when the angle of light is just right, an unusual visual effect takes place. The words appear almost completely flat, as if an artist painted the letters with dark and light pigment. Symbolically, the illumination of a gravestone is rather touching. For only a brief moment during the day, sunlight makes the stone come to life, before falling once again into darkness. The light is fleeting, just as life itself. What a poetic way to reflect on mortality. So that about covers the basics to headstones. The next time you find yourself in an old New England burial ground, choose a well-lit grave that stands out from the crowd, and take some time to study its lunette, border, epitaph, and color. Soon you will begin to realize that these gravestones are more than just markers for the dead. The early stonecutters of America made death an art form, one that will hopefully live on for future generations to come.